Hi, welcome to this Open Security Summit session in December 2024. We have Jan here talking about taking responsibility for your software, which I think it's really critical, especially given, like Jan is going to cover the Cyber Resilience Act, but I think it's one of those areas that more and more, companies need to understand, what you're producing, right, and what's actually happening in that world. So, yeah, over to you. Although, yeah, cool. We got it there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you for having me here. It's great to have the opportunity talking a little bit about the requirements that you have to take into consideration. But before I jump into the topic, I want to give you an idea of my background. Almost 20 years ago, I founded the EACG company, which is a consultancy. We do a lot of kind of architecture consulting, but also migrations into cloud and this cybersecurity part, especially software supply chain security. This is our major concern at the moment. We are serving a breadth of customers across all industries, as IT typically is doing, where you're not having a particular product focus. And then we have also developed a set of open source tools that are available under the TrustSource brand. And they all rank around this software supply chain security. But I want to jump into this now. So overall, I can say this topic is from the 20 years of architecture work. This topic is actually taking almost 10 years of the agenda. So when we talk about secure software, especially from the vendor side, I think there is one great challenge. At the end of the day, you want to make your customers happy with such emails. You want to give them the real feeling that whatever kind of product they are using, they can be safe. They will be secure because you take care for the security of the product. If you will be able to deliver such an email in the inbox of your user, you can be sure that the user is absolutely or feels absolutely safe and will be happy to buy the next product or to keep with the relation with you, depending on whatever kind of business model you're having. But what does it take to get such a message out and to get it only to the right customer? In this email, we have a couple of things that are relevant. We see it's about products. We see it's about software. We see it's about product types. It has an understanding of a vulnerability and the impact of the vulnerability. And also it has a help on what to do next. But what is required to achieve such a result? The very first thing that you need to do is you, as the vendor of a software or of a product that contains software, you will have to take the responsibility for the security of the product as a serious thing. And in the end, it's also good to do that because there's a lot of acts around that bring you to the point where it absolutely makes sense to take this position. There's TSACs for those in the automotive industry. There will be or is, depending on which country you are, the NIS2 directive. There is the CRITIS in Germany, which is for companies that are related to critical infrastructure. There's general vendor responsibility or good manufacturing practice. There's the reason of having an excellent customer service. And finally, most recent development is the Cyber Resilience Act, which came across and has taken or came into action actually end of October. So has been recently published and will take only 22 months until you need to comply with the first impact of the Cyber Resilience Act. Let's jump a little bit into it. I do not want to make a legal speech out of this, but to give you a good background, it's important to have a certain understanding of what are the impacts of this, or what are the requirements for vendors pushed by the CRA. There's quite a lot of things. It's mainly two articles that are relevant. There's Article 13, which is pushing or outlining the requirements that vendors have to fulfill. And there's Article 14, which is probably not that much in the focus because it does not bring so much complexity on the provisioning side of things. But from my point of view, it's even more hard to follow up because it's a continuous monitoring and the related reporting requirements against the notified bodies or international institutions. However, what is it that you have to provide? It starts from a software bill of material, which might not be something very new, but it's also about risk management and risk review. It requires you to do a regular risk assessment of your product and the related things. You have to create a conformity declaration that is something more or less informal. It's depending on the type of your product. You can do it by yourself. For very critical products, you have to do it by third parties.
So a quick question on number two.
Yeah.
Do they have to publish their risk review and security threats?
Actually, yes, that's a very good question. You do not have to publish all details, but you have to publish the mechanism on how you are doing it. And you have to take into your technical documentation the major risks and how they are addressed.
Because what happens if a company doesn't do a good job, or you look at it and going, well, this guy's clearly didn't do a security assessment. One of my theses has always been that I can look at a risk assessment or a threat model, and I can tell you straight away if they are in the right track, right? So if they, I think it'd be interesting to see what will be the requirements to publish, especially maybe once you start to see companies who didn't publish and then got massive vulnerabilities, and you go, well, if you had published and there had been some review and we had thought about it, maybe you wouldn't have this problem later on.
That's right, and I fully agree that the depth is not clear yet. I mean, we are in the beginning. I think it will be about the plausibility in the end. Yeah, you won't be forced to put every nitty-gritty detail and every update into your technical documentation.
Yeah.
I guess this is just something which is not really feasible, and nobody will really be able to follow up with this. And I also assume that that it's let's put it that way. It is something that you are enforced to do it, and if it's but if it's not, there is no judge that's saying you did this good or bad, yeah, except the customer. And in case something happens, your own preparedness to react.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you are fine with doing it superficially, most likely you will be passing through until something happens, and then the dices are rolled again. Yeah? But there is also, and when I talk about the sanctions, I will also come back to that topic. But because there's also sanctions about not giving complete or false comments. Yeah. So if you statements, if you say your statement, or if you state that you are absolutely fine with something and then it turns out you are not, then this could be misleading and this could also be fined. Yeah. So this is. However, conformity is declaration is something that is coming from the depending on the type of product. There are different types of products. For example, things that are more network related or managed networks are more critical than things that are just business applications. and so on. There's a classification attached. Then you might have to have a third-party requirement, but this can also be done with some or it's not always a necessity then to create or run through something like an ISO assessment or something. You can also use other assessments that are already available and have a similar state of security. So for example, if you have a C5 examination done for your products, then you most likely will not have to do it once more or an additional one. This is even defined in the Act. It also has a lot of things that it is a part of a harmonization. It's always, if there is something that is already covered, it will be exempted and so on. If it's covered by one act, it won't be necessary to do it again. So there's a lot of ease in this compared to earlier regulations. But however, getting back to our requirements, given you are declaring conformity, you also may explicitly declare non-conformity, but this is a specific case, and it may lead to being exempted from the European market. So it's not best what you could do for your product. But if you are declaring conformity, then you can put the CE mark, and you have to put the CE mark on the product, which is for technical devices or something. It's something that you really can stick on, and there are some rules on how to apply it. For real software solutions, it's something that you can put on the conformity declaration. So you are able to adjust it there or edit there. It has to be placed on the outside of the product. Yeah? So that's something that is relevant to consider. However, besides this, there's also requirements for the definition of an export period, a support period. Support period means this is the time that you will guarantee that you will deliver updates, and this has to be in relation when it's not only software but a product that has a digital element. It has to then to follow the expected lifetime of this product. So it's nothing that you can declare pretty just free, and it's essential for the lifetime cost expectations that you have to calculate, because during this declared period of support, you will have to provide the customer with free updates on security issues. This might pose a risk on your business model in case your business model is looking for paid functional updates, because you might run into trouble updating older versions without delivering the new functions that you have delivered in the cost relevant upgrade. So here you must really consider how this will impact your business model, depending on whatever you are selling. However, additional, that's what we just mentioned, or what Dennis you just asked. There's this technical documentation that needs to be provided on top, and this needs to include the aims. What is this product aimed for? And also not only a risk assessment for the product itself and its application and its configuration, it also has to include misuse cases. So things where you probably can create security issues inside your network because of misconfiguration or of misuse of the product and devices that you are using. This is a complete new dimension, and I think it will require a lot of thought and attention from the corresponding vendors. In addition, there's a few more things, but you need to prepare to have a so-called coordinated vulnerability disclosure process. That means you have a dedicated space where someone can reach out to you to tell you, hey, we found a security flaw in your product, and you need to have secure means. You need to have a mechanism on how to evaluate this and how to feedback and to ensure that this is transported in a secure way and so on. There is a lot of knowledge on this already since 10 years out in the market. Carnegie Mellon has provided a very good paper on that coordinated vulnerability disclosure, which is mainly the baseline for everything that came later. And finally, you have.
Sorry, one more question. This also applies to SaaS and hosted applications, right?
That's correct, but SaaS and hosted applications are not covered by the CRA. I will come to this in a second, because they are covered by the NIS2 directive.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
However, it's not only that you have to take care of all the security stuff. It's also about there are some reporting requirements. So given there is actually you get or you recognize that a weakness or a vulnerability in your software is exploited actively, you have to report this within 24 hours after it came into your knowledge. So there is it's really a tough reporting time. You have to be prepared to be able to report because you have to act fast. If you really learn that your product is misused by an attacker due to a vulnerability, you have to report this to ENISA and your national notified body there too.
And this is where you can have fines if you don't do this, right?
Exactly. That's for non-reporting requirements or for not complying with reporting requirements, there are specific fines. And they can go up to 2% of your global corporate value turnover. So there is no limit. Yeah, there's no limit. It really can hurt. Not to.
And then they actively exploit it. Does it say what type, like what kind of, like how damaging they are? There's a difference between a critical vulnerability and a low risk vulnerability, right?
The important or the reporting reason is not the existence of a vulnerability. It's the being exploited.
Being exploited.
Actively being exploited is the trigger for the report.
Yeah. And that doesn't matter if you have a patch or not, correct?
Yeah, it's just you need to report, say, hey, look, there's something, somebody is misusing my software.
I guess then it makes a difference if you have a patch or not, right? But even if you have,
there's no need for the patch. It's just that you need to hey, somebody is attacking. And
that is actually quite interesting because in a way that actually rewards the companies to make sure their patches actually work, right?
Interesting is that they just want to get aware of misuse. I mean, I think the guiding thought behind the designers' minds was someone who is attacking critical infrastructure.
Yeah.
And they want to get aware of it as soon as possible so that they can start acting.
Yeah, but I think he was going to have a really interesting positive halo effect because I think with a lot of these things, I always like to think of the economics of this and basically who has responsibility. So if you think about it, if I publish a software and the only thing I need to do is make sure there's a patch, I might not care that much, right? If the patch actually gets deployed, is how vulnerable my state of my users is out there, right? But with this, now you have to care. In a way, I guess what's interesting about this actually makes the companies, it's almost like let's say you have something that is exposed to the internet, right? I think this also rewards the security teams of those companies to go after the customers and say, oh, you need to patch, right? Because we just push a new fix and
exactly. I hope so that this will be the effect. I mean, history will tell. In the end, at least it's possible with this notification mechanism certs to understand whom they should ask whether they had patched or not.
No, but think about it. If I'm a CISO of a company that has deployed, software out there, and I, and we find a vulnerability, let's say internally, and we push a fix, right? The reality is, with that clause, every single deployment that currently is not patched is a liability on my side. It's actually a potential major incident because we're going to have to report it, right? We have to keep an eye on it, and we're going to have to, deal with this situation, right?
Yeah, but on the other hand, I mean, if they report, hey, look, we have a problem, and this is active. We were or have been aware that this whatever kind of vulnerabilities is actively exploited. This does not yet tell that it is then to be fixed. I mean, it would be bad if they don't. You're right. Yeah, it's a sort of a liability in the sense of a good provider. Yeah? You don't want to leave this open forever.
Yeah, but I think, okay, maybe just me, but I think you are underestimating the impact of this, because if you think about it, the risk of this having to happen goes down the more the patches are deployed, right? So now there's an incentive for the software. I think this is brilliant, actually, because I think there's an incentive for the software publishers to care about the exploitability of their environments.
Absolutely.
Up until now,
that's for sure. And
up until now, it was a
even
business decision, right?
I think this also leverages the risk assessment or the need for doing a good risk assessment.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you will start, when you have done a good risk assessment, you will be able to report about the impact, because this will be part of the second thing that you have to report 72 hours later. So there's a second reporting requirement. Up to 72 hours later, you have to report the precise estimate of the impact and the measures suggested to overcome this issue. And this you will be only able to do when you've done your homework.
Yeah. And also, what I also like about this is now going to promote good architecture, because a good architecture is able to, let's say, disable functions, is able to remove functionality, is able to do a lot, engineer for these problems. But what's cool, this is now, I mean, the manufacturer that has to care about that.
Exactly. The more remote it gets, I think the more difficult it will be, because I mean, just imagine a little piece on an IoT device that is sitting somewhere. It's also covered in the same way as a client that is connected to a SaaS application.
Yeah. No, this is really cool. I think this is very powerful.
Yeah. But not enough here. It's not only about the exploited vulnerabilities inside the code. They also have to provide security relevant incidents inside their own company. So given I'm software company A and someone has hacked one of my developers' machines.
Yeah.
And I recognize, hey, they've got access to almost whole code base, and all our security secrets that we have hard coded somewhere. All they are now known or might be known. Then this is something that needs to be reported.
That's also major, because up until now, one of the things that always bugged me was that the main conversation was always about privacy, was always about customer impact. Like the reporting was like, do we report this or not? It was more like, is their customers impacted? Where, and I tell you one that I would like to know, like I would want to know my supply chain, right? Because if I have 5 suppliers and one consistently has incidents and one doesn't have, I want to reward the one that doesn't have.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this is something that I come to later when I talk about the supply chain risk and management.
Is this information public?
From
ENISA. No, from ENISA. Really published information.
Sorry,
when ENISA receives
the reports, they can. So the notified bodies have the right to publish it if public interest is concerned.
Okay, I guess yeah, I guess there might be some cases where you want to hold it, but eventually they should be publishing, right? I guess,
Mhm.
because the bottom
Absolutely.
line is that what you don't want is INISA to know, and then people start to get hit, right? So,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
they're going to have a distribution channel, right? So you need to almost assume that as soon as it needs to know, it'll be days or hours before everybody else knows.
Absolutely.
Cool.
There's one question now I have to ask from the organizational point of view. I'm taught to I was told that we have an hour.
Yep.
I am now at I think slide 5.
You can continue because that's fine. Like I might need to drop off because I'm actually doing the next one, but you can continue. I'll make you a host and then you just stop the recording. So
Okay.
have as much time as you want, especially because we want to record this and we want to, and that's why I'm asking some of these questions, because these are definitely questions I know other people will have, right? So
Absolute. I'm fine. I even can make a longer session. Yeah.
yeah, you can keep going. I'll make you a host before I leave, and then you can just stop the recording at the end.
Okay, cool. So haven't discussed all this concerning the reporting requirements. The question remains, what is actually applying when? And here we see that after the Commission has agreed on it and it has been published on the 20th of November, immediately, because it's an act, it does not require national implementation. It's immediately effective across the whole European Union. And therefore, the reporting requirements will start on the 11th of September 2026. Yeah. So 2026 is not too far away. It's 22 months, not even 21 now. This gives you the period of time that you need or have to ensure that you can deliver all this. And here, I think is a little bit of this is a serious change for a company, and therefore I think it's depending on the size of the software or product that you are delivering. This might be a lot of work it's time to
Well,
act now.
especially companies that have a massive sort of history of products, right? And because
Absolutely.
also what you're saying is that you, even when you stop supporting, you have to keep releasing patches up to 10 years, right? 5 to 10 years.
That's right, but not for something that had the time before. It's just starting from now. So even for software that's already in the field, for the new releases need to follow this,
With
but
the new release, okay, so they're not going to go back in time, right?
it won't go backwards. So, but however, the backward thing might be still relevant for under identifying the vulnerabilities or the impact that.
What happens when a company does end of life product? They still have those 5 years, right? It's from the release date.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, right? Because there's a lot of companies might go, oh, we don't. So they're still going to have to support it, right? In a way, it becomes a liability on those companies, right?
I think it would. It's. I mean, they have to comply. So it's really a burden. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But at the moment, they a lot of companies can just go end of life support.
Exactly.
That's
And
it.
the more important it becomes to understand whether whether your software is covered by the CRA or not.
Yeah.
So for example, actually, when you are delivering a piece of software to some location or execution or put it on a device and ship it somewhere, it's almost sure that you are included, that you are covered.
So especially for IoT devices, this is like completely away, right?
There's a couple of things that really keep you away from complying with this. So either your product is just usable in shipping or marine applications because they have specific guidelines that already apply. So you should be familiar with most of it already. Airlines and automotive. Yeah, automotive has TSACs, for example. Yeah, I think they are. If you are covered by MDR, so if you put your software into a medical device that is covered to a medical device regulation, they have similar things, also require risk assessment and so on. So it's not that they don't have to cover with it or cope with it, but They have a different regulation, and that's why they're exempted here. If you just produce a software as a service solution or kind of a hosted solution that people are connecting to, then you are covered by NIS2 and therefore exempted from the CRA. Interesting would be what is if you provide a fat client that is connecting to the to your SaaS application. Here it becomes a little bit of a depending on what is happening where. The more functionality is on the client, the more relevant it becomes to the CRA becomes more relevant.
What about mobile apps?
Mobile apps, fully, from my point of view, if they are not in the shipping industry, then they are fully covered. So if not exempted by industry, yeah, then
that means every single mobile developer is going to have to care about this.
Absolute, yeah, definitely.
Right.
Currently, it's not really clear what happens with things that you can apply or their major application is in airlines, but you might use it somewhere else. Yeah, so does it then infect you, or can you forbid the use in somewhere else to exempt yourself from the Cyber Resilience Act? I don't know. These are things that we are asking the expert group from the commission that is about to continue the implementation and to guide the implementation, and also interaction of SaaS with local parts. All these are things that are still in the gray zone. So I would probably prepare to be covered. And what about the sanctions? Sanctions, it can get expensive for natural persons, and the coverage for breach of the Article 13, which is the requirements for documentation and risk assessment and so on forth, can be up to 50 million. For companies, up to 2.5% of the global worldwide annual revenue. So for breach of obligations from Article 14, the reporting requirements, you have 2% or 10 million. And for incorrect, incomplete, or false answers to authorities when you are obliged to work together with them, then this is up to 5 million or 1% of your turnover. What else can happen is if you continuously are not compliant, even if they fine you and they say, hey, come on, yeah, and you keep not to get compliant, then they can take your product from the market. So they can just forbid you to sell it. And also interesting is this applies also to everybody coming from outside Europe and trying to sell or approach the European market. Then the importer or the distributor that is taking care for this software will have to comply with these regulations. The responsibility, or at least the accountability, will remain with the original entity, but the distributor could be taken into responsibility. And this is, I think, a very important move. So
what's happening with the UK?
That's a good question. I think it's the same. So if you are in the UK and you are selling to Europe, you most likely will require a kind of a representative here in Europe, and then this representative is the one who is in the responsibility.
Yeah. I guess the key is that whoever's selling to European market will have to deal with this, right?
And absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
you can't sell to the European market.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, those who are the financial beneficiaries shall take responsibility. This is the major aim. And in case there is no one inside the EU, they will catch the one that they can catch. Yeah. That's That's how it is. I mean, if you are a German company buying from your UK subsidiary a license for a software product in the UK and you are importing it, then you are the importer.
Yeah. So I guess the distributors of software are going to have a crazy amount of stuff to do, right? Because they are the ones who are going to have to control all this.
Exactly, especially as we have so much software from the US, yeah, or from other countries. Yep. That's actually what I wanted to make as a side remark on the CRA. I think we most likely have covered the whole session on it. If you don't have further questions on it, I would just continue then.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, keep going.
Okay, fine. So what do you have to do? For those that have been joining later, the major question was, what do you need to have to do to really key or create something that you can inform proactively your customer from vulnerabilities? And the very first thing that you have to do after you have accepted that there is a certain responsibility on your side as the vendor, it is also that you start understanding of what is inside your software. There is, I mean, whatever you look at in the supermarket, you have this pieces of a list of ingredients. And it's so useful to have this because if you are, for example, my daughter has celiac, and so whenever I pick something that I don't know, the first thing I do is I look at the list of ingredients and find out whether there's some wheat included. And it's so useful because I save from the health perspective. It's just essential. So this is what you should do with your software as well. You need to have a list of ingredients of what it is made from to understand the risks and the vulnerabilities that are in there. Sometimes it might happen that you meet components that you don't understand. For example, I myself don't understand what an emulsifier is. But I can research for it and I can then dig into it because I know that it's there. And this is the benefit that the SBOM can deliver. But having an SBOM is not always very simple. You need to have to take care when you compose it that it's complete and that it's accurate. So meaning complete is not just the first level dependency, but the complete list of all transitive dependencies. I think this is what most SCA tools can deliver today. But it's also about relevant runtime components. Is there a Tomcat attached? Is there a database below? What about the database drivers? Other services that you require, probably Exchange or some SSL or whatever is used. All this has to get into the SBOM of the solution, because only when you are aware of all the things that you have in the picture, you will be able to make these proactive notifications. Also, it is absolutely essential to not only know that there is OpenSSL included, it's also relevant to know whether it's 2.2.2 or whether it's 2.1. And because there's such a difference in whether it's impacted, whether it's not impacted, how it is impacted might differ depending on the version. So a software bill of material with just software components will not help because you may get an endless list of vulnerabilities attached because everything will fit. If you look into our public vulnerability lake, you can take the product search and just start typing, for example, Apache /Tomcat and then a version number. When you don't give a version number, you will get up to 300 or whatever known vulnerabilities. If you give a version number of 9.3 something, it will burn down to 70 or something less. And this is very, so that's why the version is so essential, to have the correct version attached and have a good understanding of from the vulnerability side, what is the range of versions that are affected. Otherwise, you will run into a lot of false positives, and this doesn't make a lot of fun. And again, it's not always that. Sometimes you purchase proprietary components that you add to your software, and then these need also to be in there. You need to find a way to match them correctly, or to associate them with a supply of such information from your vendor, so that you ask your vendor, either provide me the SBOM so that I can create the details in my monitoring, or you can pull this software from a public information or from a vendor security advisory, depending on whatever is the closest for you. On the other hand, what you should make sure that you are not including are test dependencies. I really get crazy whenever I get reported from GitHub that my JUnit whatever thing is not properly and needs to upgrade because there is sort of a vulnerability attached. Depending on whatever I'm doing, I mean, my development stuff is not that much of a risk, and I do not need to inform my customer about vulnerabilities in my test environment, because this is just something that I need to do on an operational level, and I do not need to request my customer on that or to act on that. So a good bill of material, software bill of material, is not simple to create, and it's required, absolutely essential, that it is complete, so that it's not only covering the direct sources, it's covering the complete solution. And this must be the base for my monitoring. Also, you should take into consideration when you are doing these sort of scans that there might be different ways you have to do it. Not all SCA tools will be able to bridge all the different types of inputs or to cover them. For example, there's file-based analysis required for C-based languages, or for particular, especially when you do hardware close to hardware development, you often have to do file-based analysis, and some tools support it, some don't. Then there is, for those things that you develop, typically at least in the front end, or when it comes to JavaScript stuff, or maybe Python, you might be interested in package analysis. This is where you really pull packages into your software solution, and you have a so-called package manager that is providing it. I will come to this later, a little bit later. The package analysis is then interesting because it needs not only to analyze the package that you're pulling, but also the packages that are included with the package that is coming. So if I declare I want to use click as a Python library to create command line interfaces, this will in addition have 20 dependencies, and these dependencies again will have dependencies. So all this transitive path needs to be included because all becomes part of your solution. And whenever somewhere down in the stream of all these sources is an error, it will be your error. And you are the one who is providing the solution to the customer, and you want to inform your customer about the issues that are with your software. So this is these are relevant issues, and that's why you should ensure that whatever your solution is using, that you are covering with your scanning all these things. especially Docker files bear huge risks because there's a container coming. It could contain almost everything. If you do not scan it, or you are not having built it by yourself, you're having a high risk that someone is shipping something inside the container or has left something in the container that might not necessarily be what you want to experience. So therefore, there are different scanners, and you must make sure that for everything that appears inside your solution, you have the right scanners in place, and that you collect all the results into one place, best in a shareable format, so that you can use the same monitoring procedures for all these dependencies that are covered here. The next thing that you should address is the monitoring of the complete supply chain risk. Software supply chains are complex thing. We have, on the one hand side, we have a lot of we have developers that create source code, and the source code is assembled during build with additional dependencies, and this is built to packages, and then this can go round and round for a couple of iterations, and before it's going to be shipped to the consumer. And wherever each of these steps here can have different things that go wrong. And there is the SLSA initiative, or the SLSA specification, especially driven by Google, that has assessed this sort of mechanism, this sort of process, and has identified particular threats that are associated with the different steps. It starts with the committing of code and the potential bypasses, so that code review is not taking place, so that not the four eyes principle has happened, that someone can insert malicious code on that side. The source code control system could be compromised. There are different threats on the build side. I will outline, for example, I will give you the example on how simple this can happen. And for sure, there's problem of the deployment threat. Here, I want to give you an example on how this works. This is a dependency confusion attack. Typically, with all these package manager related applications, you have kind of a list of stuff that goes in there. In Python, it's called requirements text, or can be used to specify this. It might be a POM in Java, or some npm file, npm JSON in Java, in JavaScript. And the interesting thing is, how does it work? When we start deploying, then the deployment asks the package manager, hey, give me please the latest version of Click. And the package manager then is looking up in his index and saying, oh, look here, the current version is, I don't know, version 8.13, and it's handing the package. So the sources are handed by the package manager. And if someone is malicious actor is able to insert a sort of a package that he gives a very high version number into this public repository, in the next request, when the specification is not really pinned, then the build system would ask, for example, for a version, in this case, newer than version 2.4.1, because this larger than equals sign says, give me anything that is older than 2.4.1. And in our case, the pip repository would then say, oh, I have a version 99.1, so I hand you that. And whoop, 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 build is running through, and you have the malicious code inside your application. So this is sort of a supply chain attack. Yeah? And in this case, in this particular case, you could prevent such things by pinning dependencies. This is a specific convention or naming. When you pin the dependency saying click, I want to use it at 8.13, or tox, I want to use 2.41, then you get exactly that, that version from the pip repository. Developers tend not to do this because it's uncomfortable, because you don't get, when the version is increased and you want to have the new version, you need to change this file. So it's easier to say, hey, give me this one at minimum because this is what I require, and or anything else that is not disruptive to it. And then such an attack has an open playing field. However, you can learn more about all these sort of attacks and the threads when you go to the SLSA side. It contains a lot of discussion on these things and how to prevent it. And it provides, or it's more or less providing a so-called specific mechanism that is called attestation. And for this attestation, the group has developed a lot of different tools to cope with this attestation idea. The idea is that the developer is signing whatever he is committing, and based on this, you can then, when you build, verify whether you get the right thing or whether you get something wrong. Details you can find under this link. It's really worth a read. It's a little bit of effort to implement it once and to make it happening in a developers organization, but it's actually a lot of it's quite worth it. And later on, you can use these attestations and certificates for verification, and this gives you a lot of understanding on your supply chain risk. Or at least at the provenance. The next thing that is also an option, and I would highly recommend to look into this. It's a very, from my point of view, very great project. It's from the Open Source Security Foundation, the Linux initiative. It's a project that is assuming that you have a lot of dependencies, and when you want to get an understanding of a particular repository, it is searching the repository for traces of typically or common used approaches to secure the development. So it is asking the number of commits, it's looking whether code reviews are happening, it's looking for other best practices, it's looking for known vulnerabilities inside the repository for security information like security text, is a security policy there, is a vulnerability management disclosure policy there, are binary artifacts directly associated to the repository, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of things that you can do to make sure that there are no tweaks and leaks inside your supply chain. We've been talking about the threats, and these are tests on traces inside the repository, whether the project is actually taking care of this or not. It gives in total a score of 10. That's the best you could achieve, given you would supply all tests or pass all tests with a 10, then you would have a score of 10. It's almost impossible, I guess. And it's also not necessary. It's something. It's the max out of the best, and this is most likely overdone. So don't throw all projects away that are having a score of 7. It is important that for your risk assessment, that you understand the OpenSSF scorecards of your dependencies. Even if you have a 200 dependencies, you might want probably not to count all for the score, but it is essential to understand what are the scores, and is there potentially a weak thing, or what are the top 10 least scores? Can I probably look at these components and try to find different ones for them? So then I am improving the overall risk surface of my application. Very simple things to do. Maybe not so simple in realizing at scale, but with the right tools at hand, it's always quite simple. On our side, we always suggest our customers to make such a picture, at least see the tree of the dependencies that is related to a solution, and also the transitive ones, and then pick the lowest ones, at least quarterly or on a regular basis, so that you have an understanding of what the outcome is. Another important part is that we have here vulnerability monitoring. So now we have all the things together. We have all the SBOMs. We know the components. We know everything is in there. We know that the software supply chain might be very secure, so we don't have to fear too much of things that are not covered, or that bad components are introduced by the software supply chain. Now we can start thinking about our contents. Now it becomes irrelevant that we are taking on vulnerability information that is available for known vulnerabilities and identify matchings to the elements in our SBOMs. And here it becomes complex again. We need to have an accurate mapping. Getting a commons library in Java mapped with something that is a commons wiki failure is something that is just stupid, because it bears a lot of work. It's something that is taking time in the development and preventing your developers from doing productive work. Because the matching is bad, yeah, and here we have really problems, because the identification of something that is inside a repository and something that is inside your code is not necessarily very well done. Meanwhile, the PURL, the package URL, has gained an acceptance as an identifier to make sure that this repository is actually this component, or this component is associated with this and that thing. And the newer CVEs also have room for accepting a PURL being assigned, but it's not necessarily done all the time. And in addition, the older CVEs are typically just mapped to an abbreviation that's called CPE. It's called Platform Enumeration. And this works more or less not very well with open source, because it's pretty vendor oriented. On the other hand, the PURL thing has room for the ability to work with vendors, but it's not that well perceived, because you don't see their repositories and details and so on. So there's, whatever way you go, you have to cope with a challenge to make known vulnerabilities available in the right way to the components that you use. OSV and NVD are public databases that you can pull in such information from, but you have to take care for the matching. And you also must make sure that when you have third-party software included, or even projects, for example, Tomcat, Apache, something stuff, that this is covered, that this is also taken into consideration. The same way you need to put it on the SBOM, you also have to put it there, or to evaluate it concerning the vulnerabilities. And finally, there's a situation, we have vulnerabilities, but what next? In the next step, you must take care for the investigation. You must assign a procedure on how the risk will be associated with this vulnerability. Is it an impact? Isn't it an impact? Are we? Does it concern us? how would it maybe mitigate it? What can we do about it? Will we fix it, or can we just leave it, or can we ignore it, or do we have to do some sort of configuration to get rid of it? Yeah. All these things need to be done and need to be organized inside your organization. You have to take care that there is a process and that there is someone taking care for this and that someone else is probably looking at it, whether it's really happening. And if this all is done, then it needs to be communicated. It needs to be communicated to your users. It needs to be maybe communicated to the concerning authorities. We have just learned about it, that CRA is requiring you to communicate things or to report things. And the technical means to be used is the Cyber Security Advisory Framework. This is a standard from OASIS that has been introduced to communicate on a technical way, machine readable things for the security advisories. It has specified a CSAF document, and this has then specific profiles. So either you're reporting a security incident, then it is a little bit different from reporting a security advisory, which is then really saying, hey, look, we have this CVE and it impacting these and these products. And you have to do that to get rid of it, or we advise you to do these and these steps. Then there's the informal advisory. Informal advisory is more configuration thing, something that is not necessarily related to a vulnerability. Or the vulnerability exchange format, which is used more to declare that you are working on a vulnerability or that you are not going to do something about it, or in the case there is not really a security advisory because you think it's not relevant, yeah, because you opt out because this part is not used in your application or whatever. This is the sort of document that has to be produced and has to be sent around, and to allow this sending and to this communication, different roles have been introduced. There's a publisher role, which is actually the one who is creating the document. There's a provider role, which is the role for someone who is publishing the document to the public. And the specific role is a trusted provider. The trusted provider is a bit more secure because it uses secure communication, signs documents, and so on, so that it cannot be tampered with. And on the receiver side, there's a so-called lister, which is taking the indexes more or less, and so you can find a provider in the list and then go to the provider to find the details, or the aggregator, it's really pulling together the information. I don't want to dive too much into this sort of CSAF, Cybersecurity Advisory Framework documents. They are kind of a sphere for themselves. But there's good and bads about it. The very good thing is we have an exchange format. It's a structured and lightweight way to transport the stuff and to make it machine readable. So this is very good. But unfortunately, I mean, everyone who is publishing also might be wanting to consume, because if you have third-party components, this is what you want to get. You want to receive either the VAX document that's telling you, hey, look, you might know from our SBOM that we are infected with this component which has a vulnerability assigned, but we have investigated and we know this is not relevant to us. This is the information you really want to get on a machine-readable way or an automated way. And CSAF security advisories or VAX documents would be exactly the means to transport this. That's cool. That's really cool. And that's why I think this has a lot of future. But it's not what the mechanism is looking like. Currently, you would have, given you have 500 third-party components, you would have to aggregate all 500 publications, all publications from all these providers. And if these providers do not only provide the component for you, you would still have to read all their publications to make sure that you get the right advisories. And this is a mechanism that is a bit lagging. We have provided a specific alternative to it, which we try to push into the market as an alternative to the standard or an extension to the standard, which is SBOM based, saying, hey, I have my SBOM. With this SBOM, I have a particular key, and this SBOM can then be monitored locally. And whenever I want to get an update, I can pull using the key inside the SBOM. I can then ask an API and tell, hey, give me an update to this particular key, and see what are the security advisories associated to it, or what are the VEX documents associated to it. It's much more consumer friendly. Now, next days, I think even starting tomorrow, we will have discussions with the authorities, because this has been mainly defined by authorities that want to pull the stuff together, and they want to know everything and all and everything. So for them, it would be fine. But for someone who wants to make use of this, it might be a bit of an overkill to really pull all documents. Just to give you an idea, Red Hat so far has published 230,000 something documents, which is a volume with a volume of 14.5 gigabyte. So assuming you have to pull this from 20 or 30 providers, you start to understand, and just to get potentially one information, it's something that you do not want to do. Okay, anyhow, having the understanding, we want to communicate it. And we think that CSAF will be the answer to it. So prepare to make use of CSAF. Even if the communication of the SAs and VEX still is a little bit of a questionable thing on the way it is currently thought of. Finally, and this is also essential, you will have to set up your release management. Given you do not have, I mean, this especially a CRA is related for software that is going in the field. Unfortunately, the software in the field is not that comfortable concerning updates as, for example, an SAS SaaS solution will be. So you are not in control of the versions that are out there. So you will not be able to just monitor the current and its previous version. You will have to monitor a huge range of versions. And your customers may have different paths they pass through these versions. And this will pose additional risks and challenges to your updates and to your security patches that you have to provide. Or for the risk mitigation, yeah. And you must be sure that even your current version might be the 2.3. There will probably still be customers out there that are using the 2.1, and it might make useful for you to also inform these customers about their required changes. And here we are only talking software. It gets even worse when you think about products. Assuming you have a product tree and you have a product class, let's say fridges, and there's the product family A, which is the side-by-side, and there's a product family B, which is just a single fridge. And in this product side-by-side, you have different product variants, one with Ice Cube Maker, that's the Max Freeze edition, and the BioFresh. And then you have product variants with wine cooler and so on. They all might have the same software, or they might have different software, or different release dates. So assuming that, for example, the Ice Cube Maker capable fridges side by side, they would contain the general comms unit in version 1.2.1, and while the single one still is using 1.2.0. This might be something that you want to have or take into consideration when you push out your communication to the customer, because you do not want to bother the users of the 1.2.1 version if only the 1.2.0 version is the one that is impacted. I guess if you have all this got right, then you can come back to this message and say, hey, look, we can send it. We can send it to the right people. We can send it to the right people and tell them what to do. But that's a lot of things that you need to do. You can start to build all this, or you just may start applying right away. We have been working on this quite a while. We have been producing corresponding interfaces that allow you to simply navigate through the good and the bad, to identify using some kind of traffic light analogy. We have prepared insights, analysis, reports, statistics that you can use that will help you to dive and navigate towards your solutions that is integrating things like these scores and scorecards, creating risk overviews that allow you to identify and jump to the particular pieces wherever action is required. So I can just say, start your free trial right away. Looking forward seeing you and talking to you on more details. Feel free to reach out in case you have questions on any of these topics. We are supporting this not only from the software side. We have all the tools are available. They are open source. We're happy to talk to you to learn more about your requirements, and hope to see you soon. Bye bye. Any questions? If there are no questions, I'm happy to haven't had the chance to transport these ideas to you, and looking forward seeing you soon. Bye bye.